The flash of cameras captured more than just a glamorous evening at the Royal Opera House. Hidden within the glittering chaos of Britain's most prestigious charity gala was a single moment that would ripple through the corridors of Buckingham Palace for months to come. It wasn't the speeches, the performances, or even the record-breaking donations that would make headlines the next morning. It was a necklace, delicate, priceless, and carrying with it a story of love, loss, and the delicate balance of power within the world's most watched family. When Queen Camilla emerged from her Rolls-Royce that crisp October evening, photographers noticed something extraordinary glinting at her throat. The same sapphire and diamond masterpiece that had once graced Princess Diana's neck, later becoming Kate's signature piece, now adorned the Queen Consort. What followed in the next few hours would test the very foundations of royal protocol, family loyalty, and the unspoken rules that govern the British monarchy. This is the story of how one piece of jewelry ignited a chain of events that no royal expert could have predicted, and how King Charles found himself caught between the two most important women in his life. What happened that night at the gala would force the royal family to confront truths they had long avoided, and reveal just how fragile the peace within the palace walls truly was. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Clarence House as Queen Camilla stood before her dressing room mirror, contemplating the evening ahead. The Royal Opera House Charity Gala was one of the most significant events of the autumn social calendar, and, as the new Queen Consort, every detail of her appearance would be scrutinized by the media and the public alike. Angela Kelly, who had served as the late Queen Elizabeth's personal dresser for decades, now assisted Camilla with the same meticulous attention to detail. The emerald green evening gown had been chosen weeks ago, a stunning creation by British designer Bruce Oldfield that would complement her complexion beautifully. But it was the jewelry selection that would prove to be the evening's most consequential decision. "Your Majesty," Angela said softly, opening the mahogany jewelry case that contained some of the crown's most precious pieces. "I've selected several options that would pair beautifully with the gown." Camilla's eyes moved across the glittering array before her. Emeralds that had belonged to Queen Mary, pearls worn by the Queen Mother, and diamond pieces that had graced royal necks for generations. But it was the sapphire and diamond necklace nestled in blue velvet that caught her attention. The very piece that had become synonymous with Diana, Princess of Wales, and later with Catherine, Princess of Wales. The necklace told a story that spanned decades of royal history. Originally part of a sapphire parure given to Princess Diana as a wedding gift, it had been redesigned after her death and had become one of Kate's most beloved pieces. The stunning creation featured a central sapphire surrounded by diamonds, with smaller sapphires and diamonds creating an intricate pattern that seemed to dance with light. "That one," Camilla said quietly, pointing to the necklace. "I think it's time." Angela's experienced hands paused for just a moment. She had dressed royals long enough to understand the significance of such choices, and she knew that this particular piece carried emotional weight that extended far beyond its monetary value. But her role was not to question, only to serve. Meanwhile, across London at Kensington Palace, Catherine was preparing for the same event, unaware of the choice being made at Clarence House. William had already left for a prior engagement, promising to meet her at the Opera House. Kate's lady-in-waiting, Natasha Archer, was helping her with the final touches of her midnight blue Alexander McQueen gown. "The sapphire necklace, Your Royal Highness?" Natasha suggested, knowing how much the Princess of Wales loved the piece and how stunning it looked against navy fabric. Kate nodded, expecting to see the familiar case being brought forward. Instead, Natasha returned with a puzzled expression. "I'm terribly sorry, Your Royal Highness, but the necklace doesn't seem to be in its usual place. Perhaps it's been taken for cleaning." The confusion was understandable. Royal jewelry often moved between residences, and pieces were regularly maintained by the crown's jewelers. Kate simply nodded and selected diamond earrings instead, thinking nothing more of the missing necklace. At Clarence House, King Charles was reviewing his speech for the evening when he walked into Camilla's dressing room. He stopped short when he saw the sapphire necklace being fastened around her neck. His face went through a series of expressions: surprise, concern, and something that looked remarkably like resignation. "Darling," he said carefully, "are you quite sure about that particular piece?" Camilla met his gaze in the mirror. After years of being the other woman, of facing public scrutiny and criticism, she had finally reached the pinnacle of royal life. She was queen consort, and she felt it was time to claim her rightful place in the royal jewelry hierarchy. "I think it's rather appropriate, don't you?" she replied. "Diana wore it as Princess of Wales. Catherine wears it as Princess of Wales. Now I wear it as Queen." Charles understood the logic, but he also understood the complex emotions and unspoken protocols that governed royal life. This wasn't simply about jewelry. It was about legacy, respect, and the delicate balance of honoring the past while moving forward. The king had spent years navigating the complicated dynamics between his love for Camilla and his respect for Diana's memory. He had worked to ensure that Catherine felt welcomed and valued in the family. This single choice threatened to upset a carefully maintained equilibrium. "Perhaps we should discuss this with Catherine first," Charles suggested gently. "Should I seek permission to wear the crown jewels?" Camilla asked, her tone sharper than usual. "I'm the queen consort, Charles. These pieces belong to the crown, not to individuals." Technically, she was correct. Royal jewelry belonged to the crown, and the reigning monarch and their consort had the ultimate say in who wore what. But royal life was governed as much by tradition, sentiment, and unwritten rules as it was by technical ownership. Charles found himself in an impossible position. He could see Camilla's point. She had every right to wear any piece from the royal collection. But he also knew that this particular necklace held special meaning for both Diana's memory and Catherine's current role. More importantly, he understood how this choice might be perceived by the public and the media. The royal couple's departure time was approaching, and Charles realized that any further discussion would only create tension that would be visible to their staff and potentially to photographers. He made the decision that many husbands in similar situations would make. He chose to trust his wife's judgment and hope for the best. As their Rolls-Royce pulled away from Clarence House, neither Charles nor Camilla could have predicted the storm that was about to unfold. The evening they had planned as a celebration of British culture and charitable giving was about to become a defining moment in their reign. The 30-minute journey to the Royal Opera House passed in relative silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Charles rehearsed his speech while stealing occasional glances at his wife. Camilla gazed out of the London streets, the weight of the sapphire necklace against her throat feeling both natural and momentous. When their car finally pulled up to the red carpet, photographers immediately began capturing every detail. The emerald gown, the radiant smile, and yes, the unmistakable sparkle of the sapphire and diamond necklace that had become one of the most recognizable pieces of royal jewelry in the world. Inside the opera house, Catherine and William had already arrived and were mingling with guests in the champagne reception. Kate looked elegant in her navy gown, her diamond earrings catching the light beautifully. She was engaged in conversation with Dame Judi Dench about the evening's performance when a ripple of excitement moved through the crowd, signaling the arrival of the king and queen. As Charles and Camilla entered the reception area, greeting guests and accepting congratulations on the success of their recent state visits, Catherine felt rather than saw the change in atmosphere. Conversations became more animated, and she noticed several people glancing in her direction with expressions of curiosity and concern. It was Lady Sarah Chatto, Princess Margaret's daughter, and a close family friend who finally approached Catherine with a gentle but urgent manner. "Catherine, my dear," she said quietly, "I thought you should know that there's quite a bit of chatter about jewelry this evening." Kate's brow furrowed in confusion. "Jewelry, the sapphire necklace," Lady Sarah clarified. "Camilla is wearing it tonight." The words hit Catherine like a physical blow, though she maintained her composure with the skill of someone trained in royal deportment. Her mind raced through 100 thoughts at once: surprise, hurt, confusion, and a growing sense of unease about what this choice might mean. She had worn that necklace to dozens of events over the years. It had become part of her signature look, photographed countless times, and beloved by royal watchers around the world. More than that, it connected her to Diana in a way that felt both honoring and deeply personal. William appeared at her side, immediately sensing her distress despite her calm exterior. "Everything all right?" he asked quietly. Catherine managed to smile for the benefit of anyone who might be watching, but William could see the storm brewing in her eyes. "We'll discuss it later," she murmured, falling back on the royal family's well-practiced ability to compartmentalize personal drama during public events. The evening's program was about to begin, and royal protocol demanded that they take their seats. Catherine found herself faced with the prospect of sitting through 3 hours of opera while processing this unexpected development and wondering what it might mean for her relationship with her stepmother-in-law. As the lights dimmed and the curtain rose, Catherine couldn't help but touch her own throat where the sapphire necklace should have been. The absence felt more significant now than when she had first noticed it missing. This wasn't about a forgotten piece of jewelry. It was about respect, communication, and the complex dynamics of royal hierarchy. Meanwhile, Camilla settled into her seat beside Charles, the necklace catching the stage lights magnificently. She could feel the attention of the audience, could sense the photographers capturing every angle. This was her moment to shine as queen consort, to claim her place in royal history. But as the first act unfolded, even she began to sense that something had shifted. The atmosphere felt charged with more than just appreciation for Puccini's masterful composition. There was an undercurrent of tension that seemed to emanate from somewhere behind her, where Catherine and William were seated. Charles, ever perceptive to the moods and undercurrents of royal gatherings, realized that his evening was about to become far more complicated than a simple charity gala. The decision to wear the necklace was creating exactly the kind of family drama he had spent years trying to avoid. As the opera singers poured their hearts out on stage, telling stories of love, betrayal, and redemption, the real drama was unfolding in the royal box, where 3 of Britain's most prominent royals were navigating their own complex emotions while maintaining the perfect facade that royal life demanded. The first intermission arrived like a welcome relief from the tension that had been building throughout the opening act. As the lights came up and guests began to move toward the champagne reception, Catherine excused herself to the ladies' room, needing a moment to collect her thoughts away from the scrutinizing eyes of London's social elite. William watched his wife go, recognizing her need for space, but also acutely aware that her absence would likely fuel more speculation among the gathered guests. Royal watching was a favorite pastime of the opera house's patrons, and tonight they had been given more drama than they could have hoped for. "Quite a performance tonight," commented Lord Ashworth, a longtime supporter of the Royal Opera House, as he approached William with barely concealed excitement. "Though I must say, the real show seems to be in the royal box." William's training in diplomatic responses served him well. "The Royal Opera House always provides exceptional entertainment," he replied smoothly, neither confirming nor denying the obvious undercurrents. Meanwhile, in the ornate ladies' lounge, Catherine found herself surrounded by sympathetic glances and carefully worded comments from the wives of diplomats, aristocrats, and cultural patrons. Lady Pemberton, wife of the evening's main sponsor, approached with the kind of directness that only comes with age and social standing. "My dear Catherine," she said quietly, "I've been watching royal protocol for 40 years, and I've never seen anything quite like this. Are you all right?" Catherine appreciated the genuine concern, but she also understood that anything she said would be repeated and analyzed. "It's a beautiful piece of jewelry," she managed diplomatically. "It looks lovely on Her Majesty." But even as she spoke the gracious words expected of her, Catherine's mind was working through the implications of what had happened. This wasn't an accidental choice or a simple oversight. Camilla had deliberately selected the most recognizable piece from Catherine's jewelry collection, and she had done so for one of the most high-profile events of the year. Back in the reception area, Charles was finding himself increasingly uncomfortable as guest after guest made subtle comments about the evening's jewelry choices. Sir Marcus Fleming, chairman of the Opera House Board, leaned in with the kind of conspiratorial whisper that somehow managed to carry across a room. "Your Majesty, I hope you don't mind my saying, but there's quite a buzz about that magnificent necklace. I believe we last saw it at the BAFTA Awards on the Princess of Wales." Charles felt his jaw tighten. "The Queen Consort has access to the full royal collection." "Naturally," he replied, but even he could hear how stiff his words sounded. Camilla, who had been engaged in conversation with Dame Helen Mirren about the evening's performance, began to notice the change in atmosphere around her. Conversations seemed to pause when she approached, and there was a quality to people's smiles that hadn't been there at the beginning of the evening. It was her lady-in-waiting, Lady Patricia Morrison, who finally approached her with obvious discomfort. "Your Majesty," she said quietly, "there seems to be some discussion about the sapphire necklace. Perhaps I should have mentioned that it's become quite strongly associated with the Princess of Wales in recent years." Camilla's expression didn't change, but internally she felt a flicker of unease. She had known, of course, that Catherine wore the piece frequently, but she had also believed that as Queen Consort, she had every right to wear any piece from the royal collection. The strength of the reaction, however, was beginning to suggest that she might have underestimated the emotional attachment people had formed to seeing that particular necklace on Catherine. When the royal party reconvened for the second act, the tension was palpable despite their practiced composure. Catherine had returned looking perfectly composed, but William could see the storm clouds gathering in her eyes. Charles appeared increasingly uncomfortable, checking his watch repeatedly as if willing the evening to end more quickly. The second act of the opera seemed to mirror the drama unfolding in real life. As the tragic heroine faced betrayal and heartbreak on stage, the audience couldn't help but feel that they were witnessing multiple layers of human drama. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that they were watching a story about love, loyalty, and the complications that arise when personal desires clash with social expectations. During this portion of the evening, something unexpected happened that would later prove crucial to how events unfolded. Princess and Charles's sister arrived late due to a delayed flight from Edinburgh where she had been attending a charity event for Save the Children. Anne's entrance during the second act caused a brief stir, but as a working royal known for her no-nonsense approach and direct communication style, she was quickly brought up to speed on the evening's undercurrents by her lady-in-waiting. Anne's reaction was swift and decisive. She immediately understood both the technical correctness of Camilla's choice and the emotional minefield it had created. Unlike other members of the royal family who might have chosen to stay out of what could be seen as a personal matter and had always been a problem solver, she had also been one of the few people to maintain good relationships with both Diana during the difficult years and Catherine as she navigated her entry into the royal family. As the second act concluded and the final intermission began, it made her way to where Catherine and William were standing. "Catherine, darling," she said with characteristic directness, "walk with me." The two women moved to a quieter corner of the reception area, where Anne's presence seemed to create a natural barrier against eavesdroppers. "I can see what's happening here," Anne said quietly. "And while I understand the technical arguments on both sides, this situation needs to be resolved before it becomes a larger issue." Catherine appreciated Anne's straightforward approach. "I'm not sure what to say, Anne. I was never consulted, never asked, never even told. I only found out when someone else mentioned it to me." "That's exactly the problem," Anne replied. "This isn't about ownership or rights. It's about communication and respect. Charles needs to understand that this kind of surprise creates unnecessary drama for everyone involved." Anne's assessment was characteristically astute. She could see that this situation had the potential to create lasting rifts in the family, if not handled properly. More importantly, she understood that the public perception of this evening could impact the monarchy's reputation for years to come. "What do you suggest?" Catherine asked. "Let me talk to my brother," and said firmly, "This needs to be addressed tonight before the photographs hit the newspapers tomorrow morning." While Anne was strategizing damage control, the situation was taking on another dimension entirely. Social media, which had been relatively quiet during the first two acts of the opera, suddenly exploded with commentary as photographs from the evening began to circulate online. Royal photographers, who had been capturing every moment of the evening, had noticed the jewelry situation immediately. The more experienced among them understood the significance and had been waiting for the story to develop throughout the evening. Now, as intermission photos were processed and uploaded, the discussion moved beyond the confines of the opera house. Twitter and Instagram were suddenly filled with side-by-side photographs of Catherine wearing the necklace at previous events alongside tonight's images of Camilla. The comments range from confused questions about royal protocol to heated debates about respect and tradition. "Why is Camilla wearing Kate's necklace?" asked one popular royal watching account, generating hundreds of responses within minutes. "It's not Kate's necklace. It belongs to the crown," replied others, technically correct but missing the emotional nuance of the situation. "This is so disrespectful to Diana's memory and to Catherine," wrote another commenter, touching on the deeper layers of symbolism that the piece carried. The social media storm was beginning to reach the attention of major news outlets, who started preparing stories that would be ready to publish the moment the evening concluded. Royal correspondents were receiving urgent calls from their editors asking for immediate analysis and comment. Rebecca Morrison, royal correspondent for The Times, was already drafting her piece. The evening was supposed to celebrate British culture and raise funds for arts education. Instead, it has become a study in royal protocol, family dynamics, and the power of symbols in modern monarchy. Back at the Opera House, Charles was beginning to realize the magnitude of what was unfolding. Lord Chamberlain Andrew Parker approached him with the kind of urgent discretion that usually meant crisis management was about to become necessary. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "the communications team is reporting significant social media activity regarding this evening's events. The press office is requesting guidance on how to respond to inquiries." Charles felt his heart sink. What had started as a simple evening out was rapidly becoming exactly the kind of family drama that he had spent years trying to avoid. The monarchy had worked so hard to present a united, harmonious front, and now one jewelry choice was threatening to undo years of careful relationship building. He looked across the reception area to where Camilla was still engaged in conversation, apparently unaware of the digital storm brewing around her choice. Then he spotted Catherine, who was deep in conversation with Anne, both women looking serious but controlled. The king realized that he was facing one of those moments that would define his early reign. How he handled this situation would signal to his family, his staff, and the public what kind of monarch he intended to be. Would he support his wife's right to wear royal jewelry as she saw fit? Would he prioritize maintaining peace with his daughter-in-law? Could he find a way to do both? As the lights began to dim for the final act, Charles made a decision that would surprise everyone involved. Instead of returning to his seat, he asked Lord Parker to arrange for a brief private meeting during the final intermission. He was going to address this situation directly before it could spiral any further out of control. "Arrange for a private room," he told his aide quietly. "I need to speak with the Queen Consort and the Prince and Princess of Wales." Immediately after this act concludes, the final act of the opera began with Charles, Camilla, Catherine, and William all seated in their designated places, maintaining perfect royal composure while each was privately preparing for what promised to be a difficult conversation. The irony that they were watching a tragic story of miscommunication and family conflict was not lost on any of them. As the magnificent voices filled the opera house and the tragic story reached its climax on stage, the real drama was building toward its own confrontation in a private room just off the royal box, where four of Britain's most prominent royals were about to have a conversation that would reshape their relationships and potentially influence the monarchy for years to come. The audience, unaware of the gathering storm, was completely absorbed in the beautiful tragedy unfolding before them, having no idea that an equally dramatic scene was about to play out just meters away from where they Saturday. The final notes of Puccini's masterpiece faded into thunderous applause as the curtain fell for the last time that evening. The audience rose to their feet in appreciation, but in the royal box, the ovation felt like a countdown to the inevitable confrontation that awaited. Charles stood and applauded with appropriate enthusiasm, but his mind was already focused on the conversation ahead. As the applause continued, he leaned toward William. "A word, please," he said quietly. "Blue drawing room. 5 minutes." William nodded, understanding immediately that this was not a request, but a royal summons. He touched Catherine's elbow gently, and she turned to him with questioning eyes. "Papa wants to speak with us," he murmured, using the family name for Charles that indicated this was personal rather than official business. Camilla, who had been waving graciously to the crowd, noticed the exchange and felt her stomach tighten with apprehension. She had spent the final act of the opera becoming increasingly aware of the atmosphere around her, and Lady Patricia's earlier warning about the necklace had begun to take on more ominous implications. The Blue Drawing Room was one of the opera house's private reception areas, normally used for intimate gatherings with major donors and distinguished guests. Tonight, it would serve as the setting for what promised to be one of the most difficult family conversations of Charles's reign. As the royal party made their excuses and withdrew from a main reception, guests began to speculate openly about the sudden departure. The evening's drama had become the worst-kept secret in London, and social media was now buzzing with theories about what was happening behind closed doors. Princess Anne, who had been instrumental in pushing for this direct confrontation, joined the group as they made their way to the private room. Her presence served multiple purposes. As Charles's sister and a senior royal, she could provide perspective, but she was also genuinely fond of Catherine and concerned about the family dynamics. The Blue Drawing Room, with its elegant Georgian proportions and portraits of previous monarchs looking down from the walls, felt like an appropriate setting for a conversation about royal protocol and family relationships. The irony of discussing modern royal family drama, surrounded by images of kings and queens who had faced their own family conflicts, was not lost on any of them. Charles closed the door firmly behind them and turned to face his family. For a moment, nobody spoke. Camilla stood near the fireplace, the sapphire necklace catching the light from the crystal chandelier. Catherine sat gracefully in one of the silk-covered chairs, her composure perfect but her tension evident to those who knew her well. William remained standing behind his wife's chair, his protective instincts clearly activated. "I think we need to address what happened tonight," Charles began, his voice carrying the weight of both royal authority and paternal concern. "This situation has already attracted attention that none of us want, and if we don't handle it properly, it will become a much larger problem." Camilla straightened slightly, preparing to defend her choice. "Charles, I don't understand why there's such a fuss. I am a queen consort. These jewels belong to the crown, and I have every right to wear them." "You're absolutely correct about the ownership," and interjected, her voice characteristically direct. "But that's not really what this is about, is it?" Catherine finally spoke, her voice calm but with an undertone of hurt that was impossible to miss. "I think what's troubling is not the wearing of the necklace itself, but the way it was done. I wasn't consulted, wasn't informed, wasn't even told that it would no longer be available to me." "Why should you be consulted?" Camilla asked, her tone sharper than she had intended. "Do I need to seek permission from family members before choosing my jewelry for official events?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, and William felt his protective instincts surge. "With respect, stepmother," William said, using the formal term deliberately, "this particular piece has special significance. It was my mother's. It's become strongly associated with Catherine, and it represents a connection between past and present that matters to people." Charles raised his hand slightly, recognizing that the conversation was moving into dangerous territory. "Let's all take a step back," he said firmly. This isn't about rights or permissions. It's about family, communication, and understanding the impact of our choices. He turned to Camilla, his expression gentle but serious. Darling, while you're technically correct about ownership, tonight's choice has created exactly the kind of family drama and public speculation that we've worked so hard to avoid. Camilla's expression softened slightly as she began to understand the broader implications of her decision. I simply wanted to wear something beautiful and appropriate for such an important evening. I didn't intend to cause problems. Intent and impact are two different things, and observed. And the impact tonight has been significant. Catherine appreciated Anne's support, but also recognized that this confrontation needed to lead to understanding rather than further division. I want to be clear, she said carefully, that I respect your position as queen consort, and I understand that the royal jewelry belongs to the crown. But this particular piece has become part of my public identity over the years. People associate it with me, just as certain pieces were associated with Diana. The mention of Diana's name created a moment of uncomfortable silence. It was the elephant in the room that everyone had been dancing around. The complex legacy of Charles's first wife and how it continued to influence family dynamics decades after her death. Charles took a deep breath, recognizing that this was the heart of the matter. The necklace represents more than just beautiful jewelry, he said slowly. It carries emotional weight for our family and symbolic meaning for the public. Diana wore it, Catherine has worn it for years, and people have formed attachments and expectations around these choices. So, I'm supposed to be bound by other people's expectations? Camilla asked, but her tone had lost its earlier defensiveness and carried genuine confusion. Not bound and clarified, but aware. Royal life means that our choices always carry broader implications than we might prefer. William could see that his stepmother was beginning to understand the complexity of the situation, and he felt some of his protective anger begin to fade. Perhaps, he suggested carefully, we need to think about how to handle situations like this in the future. Communication, consultation, discussion before major jewelry choices for important events. That sounds reasonable, Catherine agreed. Not asking permission, but sharing information so no one is surprised or hurt. Charles nodded approvingly. This was exactly the kind of practical solution he had been hoping they could reach. What about tonight? Camilla asked. The photographs are already taken. The social media storm has already started. How do we handle the immediate situation? This was the crucial question, and one that would require careful consideration of public relations, family relationships, and royal protocol. We handle it with grace and unity, Charles decided. We don't apologize, because that would suggest wrongdoing where none exists. But we also don't ignore the situation or pretend it didn't happen. What exactly does that mean? Catherine asked, and leaned forward, her experience with public relations crises evident in her suggestion. We acknowledge that the royal jewelry collection is shared among the family, that different pieces are worn by different people at different times, and that this represents the continuing life and use of these historical treasures. We also, Charles added thoughtfully, make sure that tomorrow's events and future occasions demonstrate the harmony of this family and our mutual respect for each other. William found himself impressed by his father's handling of the situation. Rather than taking sides or making declarations about right and wrong, Charles was focusing on solutions and family unity. There's one more thing, Catherine said quietly. I think it would be helpful if we could establish some kind of informal system for sharing information about significant jewelry choices. Not rules or restrictions, but communication. Like a family group chat for jewelry? Camilla asked with a slight smile that broke some of the tension in the room. Something like that, Catherine laughed, and for the first time that evening, the atmosphere began to feel more familial and less confrontational. Charles felt a wave of relief as he watched his wife and daughter-in-law find their way back to civility and understanding. This was what he had hoped for. Not a victory for either side, but a resolution that preserved family relationships while addressing the legitimate concerns that had been raised. "The necklace looks beautiful on you," Catherine said to Camilla, and her words carried genuine sincerity rather than diplomatic politeness. "I just wish I had known beforehand." "I should have thought of that," Camilla admitted. "I was so focused on the appropriateness of the piece for the event that I didn't consider the personal impact," and stood up, recognizing that the crisis had passed and resolution had been achieved. Right then, she said briskly, "Shall we go face the photographers and show them a united royal family?" The suggestion was both practical and symbolic. The family's appearance together after their private discussion would send a clear message about their relationship and their ability to handle disagreements with maturity and grace. As they prepared to return to the reception area where guests and media were undoubtedly waiting with intense curiosity, each member of the royal family felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. The evening had tested their relationships and their communication skills, but it had also provided an opportunity for honest discussion and mutual understanding. "One more thing," Charles said as they reached the door. "I love you all, and I'm proud of how we've handled this tonight." It was exactly the kind of personal moment that reminded them all that beneath the titles and protocols and public scrutiny, they were a family trying to navigate complex relationships with love, respect, and understanding. As they opened the door to return to the public eye, they did so as a united family who had faced a challenge together and emerged stronger for the experience. The return to the reception area was met with barely concealed anticipation from the remaining guests and staff. Word had spread throughout the opera house that the royal family had withdrawn for private discussions, and everyone was eager to see the outcome of what many assumed had been a family crisis meeting. Charles emerged first, his demeanor calm and authoritative, followed by Camilla, who held her head high with renewed confidence. Catherine and William appeared together, and finally, Princess, and whose presence seemed to lend additional gravitas to the group. The family's body language told its own story. Rather than the tense distance that had characterized earlier parts of the evening, they now moved with coordinated grace, occasionally touching each other's arms in gestures of familial affection that seemed both natural and deliberately inclusive. Lord Ashworth, who had been one of the first to comment on the evening's drama, approached the group with curiosity. "Your Majesties, your Royal Highnesses," he said with a respectful bow, "we were hoping you might join us for the final reception photographs." "Of course," Charles replied warmly. "We wouldn't miss the opportunity to thank everyone who has made tonight such a tremendous success." As the royal family posed for photographs with key donors, opera house officials, and distinguished guests, the camera flashes captured something significant. The formal portraits showed a family united, comfortable with each other, and clearly at ease despite the evening's earlier tensions. Rebecca Morrison, the royal correspondent who had been preparing her story about royal family drama, found herself having to revise her angle as she observed the family's interactions. Instead of division and conflict, she was witnessing what appeared to be a family that had worked through their differences and emerged stronger. "Interesting development," she murmured to her photographer colleague. "Look at the body language now compared to earlier in the evening." The photographer nodded, recognizing the story that his images were telling. Early shots showed tension, distance, careful positioning. These new ones showed genuine warmth. Whatever happened in that private room worked. Meanwhile, social media was continuing to buzz with commentary and speculation, but the narrative was beginning to shift. The photographs from the final reception were being shared alongside earlier images from the evening, and royal watchers were noting the transformation in family dynamics. Something clearly happened during that break, posted one popular royal commentary account. "The energy is completely different in these later photos. Look at how relaxed they all seem now." The shift in public perception was exactly what Charles had hoped for when he decided to address the situation directly rather than letting it fester or hoping it would blow over. As the evening's official events concluded and guests began to depart, the royal family gathered once more for their own departure. The traditional protocol would have them leaving separately, the king and queen consort in one car, the prince and princess of Wales in another. But Charles made an unexpected decision. "Why don't we all share a car back to Clarence's house?" he suggested. "We can have a proper conversation about the evening and perhaps plan some upcoming events together." It was a small gesture, but one that carried significant symbolic weight. Royal families rarely traveled together unless absolutely necessary, and the decision to share transportation would send another clear message about family unity. During the drive back through London, the atmosphere was remarkably relaxed considering the drama that had unfolded earlier. Camilla found herself genuinely curious about Catherine's perspective on royal life, asking questions about how she balanced public duties with family responsibilities. "I imagine it's particularly challenging with young children," Camilla observed. "Charles's boys were older when I became more involved in their lives." Catherine appreciated the genuine interest and the opportunity to share some of her experiences. "It is challenging," she admitted, "but also incredibly rewarding. William and I work hard to give them as normal a childhood as possible while preparing them for their future roles." The conversation continued naturally, covering everything from favorite charities to family vacation plans. William found himself impressed by how easily his wife and stepmother were connecting now that they had worked through the evening's tensions. Charles listened to the conversation with deep satisfaction. This was what he had always hoped for, his family finding genuine connection and mutual respect beyond the formal requirements of their roles. When they arrived at Clarence's house, the decision was made spontaneously to continue the evening with tea and informal conversation in the private sitting room. It was nearly midnight, but no one seemed eager to end what had become an unexpectedly meaningful family gathering. Princess, and who had been planning to return directly to her own residence, accepted the invitation to join them. Her presence had been crucial to the evening's resolution, and her continued involvement felt natural and welcome. As they settled into comfortable chairs with tea and sandwiches prepared by the household staff, the conversation turned to more serious matters: how to prevent similar misunderstandings in the future, and how to continue building stronger family relationships. "I've been thinking about Catherine's suggestion regarding communication about jewelry choices," Camilla said. "Perhaps we could extend that to other areas where our decisions might impact each other." "What do you mean?" William asked. "Well, charity patronages, for instance, or major speech topics. Even travel schedules sometimes overlap in ways that could be better coordinated." Catherine nodded enthusiastically. "That's a wonderful idea. We're all representing the same institution and the same family. Better coordination could only help." Charles found himself moved by watching his family work together to find practical solutions to the challenges of royal life. This was leadership in action, not just giving orders or following protocol, but collaboratively solving problems and building stronger relationships. "I propose we establish regular family meetings," he suggested. "Not formal councils or official briefings, but genuine family time where we can discuss upcoming events, share concerns, and support each other. Monthly," and suggested practically, "often enough to stay connected, but not so frequent that it becomes burdensome." The group agreed readily, and suddenly, what had started as a crisis evening was leading to positive changes in how the royal family would operate going forward. As the clock approached 1 in the morning, the family finally began to acknowledge that the evening needed to end. But the farewells were warm and genuine, marked by hugs and promises to see each other soon. "Thank you," Catherine said to Camilla as they prepared to leave. "Not just for tonight, but for being open to working through this together." "Thank you for being patient with me," Camilla replied, "and for helping me understand perspectives I hadn't considered." William shook hands with Charles, a gesture that carried both formal respect and genuine affection. "Well handled tonight, Papa," he said quietly. "This could have gone very differently." "We're family," Charles replied simply. "That means we work through problems together rather than letting them divide us." Over the following days, The media coverage of the gala reflected the complexity of what had unfolded. Initial reports focused on the jewelry controversy and speculation about family tensions. However, as more photographs from the later part of the evening were published and analyzed, the narrative evolved to emphasize the family's unity and their ability to handle challenges gracefully. The Times ran Rebecca Morrison's piece with the headline, "A Royal Family United: How the Windsors Turned Potential Crisis into Family Strength." The article praised the family's maturity in handling what could have become a damaging public disagreement. Social media sentiment also shifted over the course of the week. Initial criticism of Camilla's choice to wear the necklace gave way to admiration for the family's handling of the situation. Royal watchers began praising the transparency and genuine affection that had been visible in the later photographs from the evening. More importantly, the private changes within the royal family began to bear fruit almost immediately. The monthly family meetings that had been proposed during that late-night conversation at Clarence House became a reality, with the first one scheduled for the following weekend. Catherine found herself looking forward to these gatherings in a way she hadn't expected. The honest communication that had emerged from the evening's crisis had created possibilities for deeper family relationships that she had always hoped for, but never quite known how to achieve. Camilla, for her part, discovered that consulting with family members before major decisions didn't feel like asking permission. It felt like being part of a team working toward shared goals. The simple act of sending a message to the family group chat before selecting jewelry for important events became a natural part of her preparation routine. William noticed the change in family dynamics most clearly during official events. Where there had once been careful politeness between Catherine and Camilla, there was now genuine warmth and mutual support. The two women began coordinating their public appearances more effectively, and their obvious comfort with each other enhanced the royal family's public image. Charles, observing these changes from his position as both monarch and family patriarch, felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The evening at the Royal Opera House had tested his family in unexpected ways, but it had also provided an opportunity for growth and deeper understanding that might never have emerged under normal circumstances. The sapphire and diamond necklace that had caused such drama remained in the royal collection, available to be worn by various family members as appropriate. But it had taken on new meaning as a symbol of how royal families, like all families, must navigate the balance between individual choices and collective harmony. 6 months later, when Camilla chose to wear the necklace again for a state banquet, the decision was made after consultation with Catherine, who not only supported the choice, but helped select complementary pieces from the royal collection for her own outfit. The photographs from that evening showed two women who had learned to see each other not as competitors for the same role, but as partners in representing the British royal family. The Royal Opera House Gala became a turning point in the reign of King Charles III, not because of the drama it initially caused, but because of the wisdom and maturity with which his family chose to resolve their differences. It demonstrated that even in an institution steeped in tradition and protocol, human relationships and genuine communication could triumph over potential division and conflict. Most importantly, it proved that the British royal family was capable of growth, change, and authentic connection, qualities that would serve them well in the challenging years ahead as they continued to evolve and adapt while maintaining their essential role in British society and the Commonwealth. The evening that began with tension and misunderstanding had ultimately become a foundation for stronger family bonds, better communication, and more effective collaboration in their shared mission of service to the nation and the Commonwealth.